Today we are going to be talking about the consoles that are the most pitted against each other, and that is the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck. Which one will win in a battle for the death? I don't know. So with the recent release of the Switch 2, there has been so much discourse I've seen circulating around the interwebs about the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch. I've seen a lot of discourse where it's like the Steam Deck is better than the Switch 2, or especially on like TikTok where a lot of people are like pushing for the Steam Deck over the Switch 2. As a person who hasn't picked up a Switch 2 because I have the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch, I feel like it would be a good time to discuss and compare like my experience with the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck, and like why I feel like they kind of meld together in like a perfect ecosystem of gaming. And also this will help some people who are like figuring out if they want the Steam Deck or the Nintendo Switch, or if you want both, if you have the privilege and the means for it. Before we get started, my name is Delaney. I love talking about video games. I'm over here chilling in this corner of the internet, so if you want to hang out as well, like and subscribe. And also thank you so much as always to the channel members supporting the channel as well. So let's get started. I want to discuss like the pros and cons of each system. First, I will start with the Nintendo Switch because it was actually my first console. Actually, the Nintendo Switch Lite was my first gaming console. So I did start with the Switch Lite and I upgraded to the Switch Oled. I'm going to be more so talking about the Switch Oled since that's what I play on the most now. So I'm going to give some of my pros of playing on the Switch Oled that I like. So I feel like the Switch is like the perfect like beginner friendly gaming console. When it comes to like the console wars, like with the PlayStation and the Xbox and all that, I've always been like a handheld gaming girly. Like I started out playing the Game Boy Color, so like I do have like a bit of nostalgia for Nintendo, and that's why like I felt more inclined to pick up a Nintendo Switch. I just really like that coziness of being able to play on my own, and also of like I like that private coziness of like being able to like get lost in the world. It's kind of like reading a book, but it's a game. But I think the best part of the Nintendo Switch is just how easy and accessible it is. So you don't really have to have like a lot of things to like plug and play with it. You can take it on the go, and I think the gaming library is just immaculate, to be so for real. Like you have, I started out with Zelda, Animal Crossing, and I think that the biggest factor for Nintendo is like the Nintendo exclusives, because they have such a very vast big library. But my other favorite thing with the Nintendo Switch is being able to like collect physically. So having the Nintendo Switch actually pushed me to be more of a physical collector, because there is just so many cool physical collections. The other thing that I really like about the Nintendo Switch is that I really love the accessories. Like I am a sucker for collecting the cutest accessories. The Nintendo Switch has such a good collection. There's like so many places to buy cute accessories. Like I have like so many cases, so many carrying cases and things like that, and I absolutely love that aspect as well, that it's like very good with customization when it comes to like wanting to make your console personal to you on the outside. And I think that also adds to my gaming experience personally. So that's most of my pros of why I love the Nintendo Switch. Some of my cons I would say is like, even though we have to address the elephant in the room, the performance on the Nintendo Switch when it comes to certain games, not 100% the best. I am not even like a really like techie girly. Like I'm not always like nitpicking when it comes to like 30 FPS, 1080p, like all of those like technical terms. Like if the game runs well on this, like if it runs well, if it looks nice, then I'm all for it. But I will say there are times when there is games that just don't run. Pokemon Violet. Who said that? But there are times when the games don't run the best, and you notice that they're not performing well. So this actually will segue me into my comparison with the Steam Deck, and why, even though I had the Nintendo Switch and I have there's like such a good library of games on the Nintendo Switch, why I decided to pick up the Steam Deck. So the Steam Deck, I actually was hesitant of picking it up because I was like, I already have a Nintendo Switch. I feel like, is it okay? Like, should I be splurging on another console when I have one, especially if I have such a vast backlog on Nintendo Switch? Like, I don't have a PC setup. I'm part of the Apple ecosystem. I really wanted an iMac, and I didn't really know where to start when it came to a PC setup. But because there are so many games on the Steam library that weren't really being ported over to the Switch, or that weren't running as well if they were ported over, I wanted to kind of expand my horizons. Purchasing the Steam Deck, even though I had the Nintendo Switch, was not a disappointment. Let's get into my pros and cons of the Steam Deck. So the Steam Steam Deck is not technically a console, it's a portable PC. What I like about it is that it's very, very moddable. I also have a video tour about my Steam Deck, like basically all the mods that I use and all the things that I added to make it look as cute as possible if you want to check that out. What I love is that it's basically a portable PC. You can tinker with it if you are like into that kind of thing. I really like watching tutorials online. So you can add emulators on the Steam Deck, can mods. So like if you play Stardew Valley, you want to add mods, there's a way to do that. You can also add mods to like Baldur's Gate 3, Skyrim, because there's a desktop mode on the Steam Deck, whereas basically it's like the Linux desktop, and that works as like its own kind of mini computer. And also, so like you can play games on the go. I will say that the Steam Deck isn't as travelable as I would like. I have traveled with the Steam Deck. It's pretty bulky, but I do like the like versatility of the Steam Deck when it comes to the way that it's comfortable to hold, as opposed to like Nintendo Switch. I feel like I have to kind of add a little bit of like accessories to Nintendo Switch to be able to have a good comfortable feel to it, because of the like kind of bulkiness of the Steam Deck. And my hands are like really, they're not small, so I don't have any complaints about the button mapping and like how I hold on to the Steam Deck. But I think one of my biggest things of owning the Steam Deck that I love and that I still have zero regrets about, the fact that I can play so many games that are not available on Nintendo Switch. A lot of games when it like recently especially have been like early access, so they take a really long time to like be perfected to be able to go onto other consoles. One of my like most prominent ones for me when I picked up the Steam Deck was playing Coral Island, and it's actually one of my favorite farming sims, and still not on the Nintendo Switch, which really sucks because I really think it will work really nicely on the Nintendo Switch. I feel like it has like opened up my horizons to games, and there's also like a lot of good Steam sales, like honestly better than on Nintendo Switch like digitally. That would be my only con though when it comes to the Steam Deck, is that you can't physically collect for it, so all the games are digital. And I'm always just like, not really like, I like physical collecting because I like the idea of it being permanent for me, like something that I can hold, I can see where my money is, and also just like 20 years from now I can take out one of my Switch games and play. But when it comes to like Steam, it is all digital, and sometimes I don't 100% agree with like collecting digitally, but there's such a great library of games that I've been able to try out on the Steam Deck that I can't play on Nintendo, especially when it comes to like the performance. And also it's like there's a good balance of playing like the indie games, but also some of like heavy hitter games like God of War I've played, or like Hellblade. I've played like the really graphically intensive games, and it runs really well. But that does lead me into like my cons of the Steam Deck, which is like the battery life. Is if you're playing one of those like really intensive games, like if I play Baldur's Gate 3, I probably get maybe 2 hours max before I have to plug it in because it's so graphically intensive, and that can be a little bit annoying because like I feel like when it comes to Nintendo Switch, I can play all day on my Nintendo Switch before I have to go and put it on the charger. So that is the one aspect about the Steam Deck. It depends on the game you're playing. Like that's my thoughts on both the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck. Now I want to go into my point of like how I think they work perfectly together and not against each other, because a lot of people like to compare the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck because they have different types of versatility. Like it's kind of no comparison at the same time, because Nintendo Switch is a console at the end of the day. It is made as a handheld system, and so it doesn't run as powerful as the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is, you know, it's a PC. It's pretty much a mini PC, which I don't think a lot of people realize because of the handheld function of it. And for me, who started out like as a beginner friendly, more like dipping a toe into the gaming like sphere, the Nintendo Switch was perfect for me. But as I progressed, I feel like my gaming taste evolved, and that's why I feel like the Steam Deck was a perfect like filled in some of those spaces I feel like I was missing when it came to like certain games that I wanted to get into, and just like the versatility of it. I would say I feel like it's like a perfect symbiotic relationship between the Steam Deck and the Nintendo Switch. So I feel like at the end of the day, it's based on your personal gaming preferences. Like if you feel like you are wanting to get into a lot of PC games, I highly recommend the Steam Deck because it's perfect for that. Though the battery life can be a little bit not the best, it still runs pretty well, and I still do get a good gaming experience out of it. You just gotta kind of make sure you have it plugged in when you're playing those really intensive games, I will say. And if you're like a person who doesn't know anything about gaming, I highly recommend the Nintendo Switch, because Nintendo Switch is like the best starting point. Both, like that's how I feel like both systems are so versatile to like a person's gaming needs. It makes gaming more accessible in some ways. You guys let me know, what is your favorite between the two, the Nintendo Switch or the Steam Deck? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one, and have a wonderful day. Bye.